2018, my friend and great producer Kabir Segal asked me to be involved in a new project they were developing in Switzerland about Abraham. And they wanted to involve 3 different composers portraying the life and the story of Abraham from the perspective of the 3 Abrahamic faith traditions. So I was the chosen Muslim composer. I'm originally from Turkey. And we recorded that album in Switzerland. We did a tour, and it was great. Billy Cobham was involved in that version. But I always wanted to do a jazz orchestra, a big band version of that composition. The version we recorded was for a smaller ensemble. And I always heard the potential for a larger jazz orchestra version. So I grew up in a city called Bursa, and my parents were definitely Western-facing secular Turks, but my dad would take me to the mosque during Ramadan, not every night, but certain nights. And so, and the city that I grew up in was somewhat conservative. So I ended up getting exposed to Islam from an early age, for sure. That being said, later in life, I actually came to know the mystical, spiritual side of Islam called Sufism. And that's when I really connected with Islam, I think. So I thought that I would look for 3 different stories in Abraham's life according to Islam that were more dramatic than others. The first episode was, according to Islam, when Abraham receives the word of God for the first time, and he starts spreading the word around amongst the people. The king of that region hears of this and is not happy about it. And so he decides to cast Abraham into fire, but then Abraham is saved miraculously by God. I actually used a Sufi, quote-unquote, musical device. And so I thought, all right, I can use a Sufi zikr, which is the practice of repeating the names of God via breath or short musical phrases. So I thought, wow, if I can have the Islamic phrase, La ilaha illallah, there's no God but God, as if it's Abraham, repeating that, knowing that he's walking to his death, but that becomes this death march. And then, of course, he's miraculously saved. The second movement is the famous sacrifice. But it was not Isaac that was being sacrificed, it was Ishmael, according to Islam. And in this movement, I took a more film music-like approach. I really kind of portrayed tension building, and this is where I really went jazz fusion. You have an Afro-Cuban fusion groove that builds throughout the movement, and it kind of leads to that peak dramatic point of the sacrifice. In the final episode, I decided to portray the story of Abraham and Ishmael building the Kaaba together. These two figures building the house of God together also gave me an opportunity to think about it from the perspective of the Sufis. And so I decided to sing. I even wrote the lyrics, which, I very rarely do. And here, the house of God is built for all Muslims to face when they pray. But according to Sufis, the house of God is the heart. Turning inside and finding God within you, in your heart, is one of the most important realizations that man is capable of, according to Sufis. And so it was interesting to me to have Abraham make such a comment in music.
I've been after a touch of eternity. In my small world, in some corner, I've been.
When I got this commission, it was kind of around the time when Donald Trump made a speech about banning Muslims from the United States. And it was interesting to me that those people who came out to defend Muslims and protesting against Donald Trump had these images of Muslims that were, to me, very stereotypical and really outdated, because almost all of the images showed women that were covered, or even the New York Times had pictures of Muslims over prayer rugs. I thought, wow, why portray Islam just from the mainstream conservative angle? Islamic culture is vast, is very diverse, really varied. You have all kinds of secular Muslims. You have Sufi dervishes with immense variety amongst them. And then, of course, you have mainstream Muslims. But hey, even that, from Turkey to the Gulf region to Egypt, it's all very different. So, I thought that maybe I can contribute by bringing this kind of diversity into my music through the way of, Sufi influences, different types of musical genres, all finding its way into this portrayal of Abraham, in order to see if I can help defeat these centuries-old stereotypical images of the Muslims.
Often defeated by my humanity.